Hey again from the garden, it's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. So we're about 3/4 of the way through this year's growing season. And throughout the spring and summer, I've been taking some notes on my phone with different things that I've learned throughout the season, things I'm gonna be doing differently for next year. So I thought I would just film a video to share that with you guys. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know that I have really expanded my growing space this year. And so a lot of the early season, I was really concentrating on that. We put in the hoop house, we put in a lot of new beds, and so some of the other things in the garden got a little bit neglected. But you know, I'm going to learn every year, and my garden's going to look different every year. So I have really been taking some good notes this year. So I'm just going to literally, in no particular order, I'm going to go through my list on the phone and share all of those with you. And as I'm going through these, I'll put some footage up on the screen so that you can see the exact areas of the garden that I'm talking about. Also, I want to make a comment on my audio. I've had a few of you comment that the audio seems different, or if you're wearing earbuds, it's only coming in on one side. Is it just the most recent videos, or is it all of my videos? I did get a new microphone. I have a new one on order. So I hope to get this problem solved. But if you've been experiencing this problem, or if it seems different in this video, I want you to comment down below because I really want to get this resolved. I don't think it affects the computer or the television. I think it must just affect like earbuds. So I'm not that techie. Hopefully I can get this figured out. So here is my list. There's maybe 15 things. I'm just going to dive right in. The first one is feverfew, and feverfew is a hardy annual that I absolutely love. I have it planted here in the garden in my fenced-in area. Those wintered over from last year, and they got really tall, and those were the ones that I harvested first this year. I also planted another area out in my new area next to the hoop house, and I planted some in my hoop house. Now, my note is that feverfew is not as good in the hoop house. Now, I'm going to be leaving those plants in to hopefully winter over to see if I can get some early blooms, and I want to see what they look like. But basically, the difference that I noticed is with the Magic Single. So the Magic Single has a yellow center with white petals around the edge. What I noticed in the hoop house is that the Magic Single, the petals have spaces in between them, and there are not near as many. Now, I don't know if that's because I had shade cloth on, maybe they just grew different, but my note is that all my feverfew that is planted outside of the hoop house looked better. So that was just an observation that I made. The second thing on my list is I want to plant sunflowers earlier. Now, the last few years, I have direct sowed all of my sunflowers because in my area, that just works great. My location, I don't have pests that dig up the seeds. They come up really early, and it just works really good. However, I would really like to have sunflowers earlier in the season. So instead of planting the direct sown seeds Memorial Day weekend like I typically do, next year I would like to try planting them mid-May. Our average last frost date is typically mid-May. So if I can kind of risk it and inch that forward a couple weeks, I could have sunflowers a couple weeks earlier. The other thing that I could try is starting them earlier inside in seed trays or soil blocks and then planting them out that way. So next year the goal is to have sunflowers earlier. So mid-May is going to be my start date for those. So my next two notes are also on sunflowers. Now, if you've been watching my videos, you know that I have a 96-foot bed where I plant pumpkins, and I grow all of those pumpkins specifically for a market in September. Last year, I took about 350 pumpkins to this market, came home with 15 little ones. It was awesome. So I'm doing the same thing this year. I also have numerous hills in other spots, which I will show you when I harvest all of those. But I also try to get multiple uses out of that bed. So earlier this season, that bed housed my daffodils, and it worked great. So those will continue to live in there. Now, when I planted my pumpkins, I planted, if this is my bed, at the back of the bed, I planted sunflower seeds because those will grow up tall. And in the front of the bed, I planted my pumpkin seeds because those will branch out. It worked really well last year. It is not working this year. I had a lot of sunflowers self-seed and come up naturally, which I completely weeded out, and I left some along the back of the bed because I just really like the looks of it, and it brings in pollinators and birds, and it's just a really great natural environment. However, I think next year I'm not going to allow any self-seeded sunflowers, and I also am not going to be planting sunflowers in that bed. I really think that early on it hindered the growth of my pumpkins, and this year I don't think I'm going to get as many pumpkins for my harvest, which is unfortunate. So that bed next year will be solely devoted to the established daffodil bulbs, and then pumpkins, which get planted Memorial Day weekend. All right, so my next note is winged amoebium ? This is something that I saw on someone else's Instagram, that it was a really nice little filler flower and also a good dried flower. So I'm thinking of trying that next year. If any of you grow that and love it, let me know. I also would like to start saving some more seeds to plant in 2024. Previously, I have saved celosia seeds and replanted them, and it worked great. This year, I really would like to save other types of seeds. So not just celosia, but I would like to save, well, for example, honeywort. I already have been saving honeywort seeds. What else am I going to be saving? Let me think a minute. Poppies, strawflower, starflower, zinnias. There's a lot of them, but that is one of the goals, is to try to save some seeds. Even from my favorite zinnias, I would like to try to recreate those for next year. And along with that note, I really hope to winter over all of my dahlia tubers, so I barely have to buy any dahlia tubers next year. That will really save on cost as well. Okay, so my next 3 notes are on other varieties that I would like to try. Clary sage for filler. I've seen that in some other videos and Instagram posts. I really would like to try that for next year. Poppy pods is a yes. One of my flower farmer friends, I purchased a bunch of 10 poppy pods from her for accents when I had a special order that I was doing. I loved them, so I need to grow poppies next year. And then asters, no. I have tried the last 3 years to grow asters. I have been unsuccessful every year, so I'm just not even going to worry about it next year. It's taking up seed starting space and garden space. No asters. Okay, snapdragons. I have a couple of notations about snapdragons. They are one of my favorite flowers, and one of them that I depend on earlier in the season. I have had a horrible year for snapdragons. So I planted a whole bunch in my hoop house, which I was hoping to get earlier blooms off of. They did okay. I didn't get my floral netting up in time. Honestly, I probably should have planted them earlier, but we didn't have the hoop house established. Then it got super hot and they languished. So I have since then cut them back, and they are all flushing new blooms. So I'm going to get a really good harvest now, but I really wanted them earlier in the season. The other area of snapdragons is around my little greenhouse, and those just didn't do well either. Partly my fault for planting. I don't think I did the right variety. I should have done the Potomac. I did the Madame Butterfly. I'm not as crazy about those. And I just think I didn't plant enough. I also think that I could space them a little closer, and I think that I might try 2 snapdragons per hole. And every year I pinch my snapdragons. Next year, I think that I am not going to pinch my snapdragons. I'm just going to let that single stem come up. One, it'll be a stronger stem, and the second, I will get blooms earlier. So plant earlier, plant 2 per hole, and do not pinch. That is my instructions to myself for next year's snapdragons. I also am going to go back to planting mostly the Potomac variety, because those just work the best for me. They bloom throughout the whole season, so I just got to plant what works. All right, a few more notes here. I need more cosmos. I love the flowers for accent flowers, but I also love the foliage for a filler. This year I had a crop failure of ageratum, and I'm really finding that I miss it. However, I think I planted the timeless mix, and it is not super tall. Now, I did see that there is a purple or bluish variety that is a specific taller mix. I think it's available from GeoSeed, and so I have a note to look into that and order seed for that specific mix next year. Okay, zinnias. Zinnias are one of the summer flowers like right now that I bank on for my main flowers. Dahlias will be next. Sunflowers are right now, but zinnias are a main one. And so next year I need to plant double the zinnias. I have one bed of zinnias in here that is kind of mixed in with some rudbeckia. It's not working super well, and I think it's because it's sharing a bed. I need to just have them all by themselves. My other bed of zinnias, where I'm harvesting everything from, is right next to the hoop house and is working fantastic. So I need to expand that area with zinnias. So that is my note for next year. I'm also thinking of planting zinnias right here in front of me where my celosia is, because I think this could be a perfect bed for that. So I'm thinking maybe if zinnias are in this fenced-in garden, I might flip-flop the celosia and the zinnias, because this could be an easy harvest space. Celosia I don't harvest as much, so I should have that in maybe a less accessible space, if that makes sense to you guys. Okay, honeywort. If you guys have not grown honeywort for a filler, I highly recommend you try it. I ordered some seeds from Flora last winter just to try it because I thought it was beautiful. The foliage is kind of a bluish green color, and then it curves over and gets these little purple bell-shaped flowers, and I just really love the look of it. When I started the seeds, I had a little trouble, and so I ended up restarting them, and I found out, first of all, don't put them on a heat mat. They really like to start in cooler conditions. And then I had like 100% germination, and I had way more honeywort than I had bed space for. So I have one bed that is next to my greenhouse. These plants are so big. They're covering my pathway. I have been harvesting off of them for weeks. So I need to put them in a space where they can spread out a little bit more. They also need staked or netted for support. I'm definitely finding that out. And I think I need to plant a couple succession plantings of them because now they are starting to die off, but I just want to expand that harvest a little bit. So honeywort is a definite grow for next year. I just need to do it a little bit differently. Okay, two more notes. The next one is on pollinators. I have an area at the back of my property where there are two raised beds that the previous owner built. And I have those planted with potatoes. We planted some cucumbers, some mini pumpkins are vining there. And then I ended up landscape fabricing the area around it, and I have two other hills of pumpkins. I have been noticing that there are not as many blooms on those pumpkins as the ones that are over on this side of the garden, and I think that's because there just aren't any flowers over there. I'm wondering if I need to draw the pollinators over to that space. Now they're not super far away from each other, you know, maybe 100, 150 or 200 feet, you know, so they're in the area, but this area is so heavily filled with flowers. I just think that maybe that area needs a little bit of flowers. And so my goal in my vegetable areas next year and my additional pumpkin areas is to make sure that I have flowers so that the pollinators want to go to those spots, so that everything, you know, can produce as well as it could. And one more note, speaking of vegetables, you know, my hoop house is such a great season extender. I think that I would really like to try planting a couple vegetables in there next year. You know, maybe some peppers or tomatoes. You know, you can use the string method with tomatoes where you hook the string to the top and to the ground, and the tomatoes can vine up that string. I could easily, I think, tuck 2 tomato plants in a corner, barely take up any space, and get a really great harvest. So that may be something that I experiment with next year. I don't want to take up a bunch of space because obviously I need as much as possible in the spring for my ranunculus and anemones and stock and snapdragons. But I think that's something that I could definitely play around with. Okay, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this video of me just kind of rambling and talking through my thoughts of the garden. I would love to hear your thoughts as well too on anything that I've mentioned, you know, if you guys have tips for me. And like I said, every growing season is completely different. I'm going to change things every year, and I should change things every year. I should rotate crops every year. So it's definitely just about learning and figuring out how to get the best flowers and the best yields possible. So anyway, I'm going to end this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it and hope you're having a good day, and we'll see you soon.